Hello, good afternoon, good evening, and good morning from Singapore, regardless where you may be right now listening to our online program. Welcome to the Singapore International Photography Festival online program. My name is Gwen Lee, the director of SIPF, and it is my pleasure to introduce our guest speaker and to facilitate this conversation. In this series, From the Ground, we talk about disruptions and adaptations, and we will hear from Fiona Sweet, Creative Director of Ballarat Photo Biennale, and Lauren Hadler, the Director of Education and Public Program with the KYOTOGRAPHIE International Photography Festival. To begin with, a very short introduction on the Singapore International Photography Festival. The 7th edition of SIPF is happening across 11 venues in Singapore from the 5th November to 30th January 2021. In this 12 weeks long platform, it comprises of physical exhibition of more than 70 artists' work, online reviews and talks. Across the world, needless to say, the pandemic outbreak since the beginning of the year has created disruption in all sectors, including the arts and cultural sector. Often the execution of international platform involved enormous efforts to plan the canvas for sponsors and donors to actualize this program. In view of the situation in 2020, questions out there is how does photo festival in Asia Pacific region adapt to changes and to sustain on with their programming and to continue to engage their audience. Today, we will get to hear from Lauren Hetler, Director of Educational and Public Programs at the KYOTOGRAPHIE International Photo Festival. A very short introduction on Lauren. She has diverse experience in the industry from architect to the arts, working with various government organizations and artists in both public and private sectors. She worked internationally with the Japanese craft and sits on the advisory board of the Case Art Fund and NPO with photography at the hearts, raising awareness about children's human rights through exhibition of photography in non-traditional way. And here with us also is Fiona Sweet. Hi, Fiona. Creative Directors of the Ballarat International Photo Biennale. It is such an incredible festival and is a leading contemporary photographic events. And I have the pleasure to visit the festival last year. In 2017, in her inaugural year as a creative director, the Biennale has drew in audience of over 26,000 individuals, contributing to an economic impact of 3.89 million to the local economy. As well, under her directorships, the Biennale was responsible for more than 37,000 with the injections of 7.8 million into the city economy. And in her 4th year, working with incredible artists and curators, the festival promotes artists, prompt audiences to question, explore, and be changed by arts. She has successfully invited Chinese artist Liu Boling as a headline artist exhibiting his camouflage series. And I'm sure that Fiona and Lauren has a lot more to share with us today. To begin with, let's invite Lauren to share about KYOTOGRAPHIE and the programs that is carried out in Kyoto. Lauren, thank you.
Thanks, Gwen. KYOTOGRAPHIE was founded in 2012 and we had our first edition in 2013. The festival is basically, I'd say 95 to 98% privately funded, so we don't get any government funding. This means we can program whatever we like, which is very exciting. One of the main elements of the festival that we're very proud of is the way that we use scenography and different buildings. So we really incorporate the curation and the scenography with the space. This year was our 8th edition and the theme was vision, which was quite fitting considering that the theme was thought of before, but it worked out really well. We had to postpone from April till September this year, not knowing how that would work out, but it actually turned into a very positive edition. We had about just under 400,000 people visit the exhibitions this year. Because we had quite a few outdoor exhibitions. Normally, so it's not that different than other years without the pandemic. So the festival still received a huge audience, which is fantastic. We started the festival to create a stage for photography within Japan, because often Japanese photographers are quite well known outside of Japan, but are not, in the past, 10 years ago, weren't really recognized inside Japan. And also to harmonize the traditional spaces we use with a more modern kind of sense and design. We had to reduce the exhibitions down to 10 this year, plus our satellite event. And we had to really minimize the public program, of course. So we went down to 33 events and launched an online platform. But to give everyone more of an idea of what Kyotography is and what we did this year, I have a video that I'd like to share.
Thank you. Laura.
And I suppose what's really interesting about having a photographic festival in such a historic city, and having had that festival for more than 15 years, it really changes the community's perception of what art can be. As we all know, photography is a very democratic art form, and it allows more people to engage than many other art forms, because we have phones on our cameras on our phones. It's very easy for us to upload photos. So the festival celebrates the community spirit of the town of Ballarat, but also we introduce to them never seen before artists exhibiting in Ballarat. So probably about 50% of the artists are international, many of whom in the past would come to give artist talks and be involved in forums and conversations. Of course, who knows what will happen next year. What else can I tell you about the festival? Where it's held every 2 years. It's held in winter. So it's a very, very cold tiny town, and we do have snow. So it's quite a beautiful, intimate festival in the middle of winter. So people rug up and walk around and engage with the beautiful heritage buildings, which we reimagine with contemporary art practice. I started as the director in 2016. So I've only done the last 2 festivals, but my aim was for the festival to have a bigger profile, not just within Ballarat, not just within Melbourne, but also with all of Australia and internationally. So I have travelled extensively, met with very many curators, including Gwen, of course, into various countries to promote not just the bringing of international artworks to Australia, but also promoting Australian photographic artists to the world. The program is a very simple structure. There is a core program where our curators and me as the director curate on a theme or a premise. Then we have an outdoor program, which is quite extensive in the laneways throughout the city. And then we have what's called an open program, which we invite artists who are not necessarily fitting in with the curatorial practice of the festival, but they're invited and they exhibit in the cafes, the bars, the restaurants, the hotels. So the entire city, not dissimilar to, I would suggest, to Arles in the south of France, is completely immersed in photography. What else can I tell you? I think that might be enough as an overview. Of course, like all photographic festivals, we run a strong public program, and more in the last 4 years, we've included an education program for our primary and secondary students, so the students that are not yet at university. So that program has grown dramatically, and that's something I'm very, very proud of. I suppose just to finish off, I probably should just tell everyone that we've bought a building, we're renovating it, and we're going to have the National Centre for Photography based in Ballarat as well. I think that's probably all I need to say at this stage, Gwen.
Thank you, Fiona. And I believe that you actually have a series of images to share with our audience here. It just that wasn't showing up when we were talking. Yeah, perhaps you want to share and explain some of the slides that you actually have prepared for us today? The images that you have prepared. Yes. So I guess that in the slides itself, we could see that Ballarat has this very interesting balance of international artists and local or even regional works from Australia. And likewise, similar so for Kyotography, I could see this wide spectrums. So in view of the current pandemic and the situation of closed border, do you foresee that this would actually shift or helps shift or re-look into your programming content in view of like artists unable to travel, and in view of the fact that maybe also the shift in the interest of audience wanting to look more insight within into a more local content. So I just want to hear what are the shifts or changes because of the current pandemic. Yes, coming from both of you. Yeah.
So we were quite fortunate because it was a Biennale. We're a Biennale this year. We did not have a festival. But having said that, I spent, all year really, I think Gertrude Stein talks about how exhausting it is to sit all day and think and do nothing. There's a lot of thinking and processing that had to happen for us to plan for 2021. I don't know if your audiences know, but in Victoria, we had a complete lockdown for 120 days. So all the art galleries, museums, shops, cafes, bars, every single shop was closed except for emergencies. We were only allowed out once a day to do shopping and once a day for a walk. So this gave us a very strong indication of how crippling a pandemic can be to the art world. And like our partners in Australia, the theatre sector, the live music sector, museums and galleries, we've all been really very much shaken by our structures, I think is the best way to describe it. So the structures that have been in place for hundreds of years and how audiences engage with art, how we engage with audiences has really been just broken apart like a scrambled egg, really. And it's allowed us to, though, on the other hand, be incredibly innovative and creative. So I know for the Singapore International Photographic Festival, you've done a lot more outdoors. Most festivals have moved more into that outdoor space. Many are talking digital. Of course, digital doesn't allow us to engage with audiences and doesn't allow audiences to engage with each other. And it doesn't allow that dynamic conversation.
That's something we miss so much, right? To meet up with people, gathering in a festival. And I sure that in every festival, and having visited both Kyotography as well Ballarat, is always about meeting new people, catching out, sharing ideas, and that atmosphere is the one that truly make all this platform magical, right?
Yeah.
And yeah, so Lauren.
Sorry. So we held the festival anyway, which was very kind of a stressful thing because Japan went into lockdown in April and May, and that's when we were meant to hold it. So we actually postponed in February. So it was like everything was planned. And then we had to re-envision all the scenography, the number of exhibitions, even we reformatted our catalog. We changed a lot of things, and it was a very scary moment, but a very exciting moment, because we decided to see it as an opportunity rather than, the end. A lot of people were very like, oh no, everything's over. But talking about the digital platform, we were able to do both, have a digital platform and then also have the real life exhibitions. And the feedback was that with the COVID measures that we put in place, the people were spaced in the exhibitions, and some of them you had to book prior, temperature checks, all this kind of thing. But people got more of a moment inside the spaces. And because they'd had lockdown and because everyone couldn't travel and all this kind of thing and couldn't see their friends, they had a more deep connection with the work that was shown.
Yeah.
And then for the digital platform, we 3D modeled the exhibitions. So if you were old or scared or pre-existing condition or weren't in the country, you could still experience the festival.
Yeah, indeed so. And I guess that it's a lot more challenging because Kyotography has to work with different stakeholders in the city, right? In terms of working with existing space, whether it's a temple or a shrine and non-typical white cube space. And I guess that must be a lot of negotiation behind the scenes on how to reshuffling the exhibition to the September.
Exactly, because we use some government-owned spaces, but generally it's all private. So every landlord is a different negotiation. Japan didn't have a set of COVID guidelines, like for example, Australia. I'm not sure of Singapore's guidelines for art events, but there was no standardized thing here. So we had to like look from all different sectors and make our own guidelines, and
Wow.
then proceeded with the festival in our own kind of vision. And we really had to rely on our audience to do the right thing and
Yeah.
protect each other.
Mm.
And it was very humbling, actually. Because of COVID, we had a reduction in some of our sponsorship, as everyone's seen over the world. So we started a crowdfunding campaign to make up the difference. As I said before, we don't get the government funding. And the outpouring, we went over our mark, and the outpouring and all the comments and stuff from all the people that had been coming to the festival from the first edition was beautiful. So I think really we've come back to an art space that's maybe going to be a lot more democratic in the future. We're going to lose a lot of this like hierarchical structure of this is the curator, this is the museum, and you're the audience, and we're going to teach you what you need to know. We're entering back into more of a conversation with our audience, I think everyone in the world, and it's a very exciting opportunity, I think.
Wow, that's so incredible. And I guess that in the times of difficulty, it's always whereby we see the heart of our supporters truly shine when they actually see the purpose. And I believe that your audience as stakeholders see the purpose and the reason for Kyotography to continue on despite all difficult challenges. Has it ever occurred to you and your planning committee to even consider to postpone it to next year instead of holding it this year? And are there other considerations to say that to pursue having the festival in 2020 and not 2021? I know this is kind of like a lot of questions that been also directed to me here in Singapore about whether should I postpone SIPF to 2021 and not to have it in 2020. Yeah.
It was a big thing. You know, sorry, Fiona, go on.
No, you go on.
It was a big thing for Kyotography. There was a lot of people saying you shouldn't do it, don't do it, like, you know, a lot of negativity. And as I said, it was a scary time, and because we didn't have any like guideline, so we're really on our own. But it fortunately all worked out really well. And the thing that came out from the community was that people were saying, you know, they appreciate Kyotography even more because they really needed some cultural event and some kind of exchange and dialogue and some kind of different opinions than the mainstream that they were feeling every day. So to have this moment to be together, and it was quite nice weather, and we opened a new permanent space which has a gallery and had a bar, and we could do some things with social distancing. And so yeah, I think it was a scary time, but it's really, really great that we went ahead. I think if we hadn't have gone ahead for the next edition, it would be a very different festival. I think we're kind of reborn, which is great.
Yeah, indeed. And I guess that continuity is so important, not just for the festival, it's present, but also for the people that the festival serve, to have this continuity. And to you, Fiona, just now, I guess that you also have something to share with us here.
Oh, I was just picking up on Lauren's point to do with connectivity and the notion of the two-way and that lack of hierarchical structure. I think the thing that all directors have been exploring now with digital is that it is far more a two-way street. So rather than the presenting of artwork on walls or on floors or even in a outdoor setting, you know, we preset, if you like. So the artist has their vision, has their philosophy, has their sort of mission for why they work, we work with them as curators to represent their work in a way that is suitable for a public arena. It allows them, of course, to have their work exposed to other curators and directors who are coming along to see it. And all of a sudden, once we move into this digital space, yes, there's this, you know, connectivity and there's this two-way street, but in a way, it's it doesn't sort of extend beyond the screen. Our friends at PhotoWorks, which is in Brighton, in England, they did a fantastic project this year where they did an exhibition in a box. So you paid and you received a beautiful box with a complete series of works that were a large exhibition, all folded. You unfolded the works and they were large posters printed at scale that the artist had selected, with didactics and labels as well within the box. And the idea was that you would take the work off your walls and you would hang your own exhibition as part of the PhotoWorks Festival. And I thought, you know, there's different ways that we're talking about, you know, how many people per square metre, if we're, you know, in the real world, or do we go digital? But I suppose the conversation I'm really interested in having with lots of people is what else beyond adaptations of the festival and digital could there possibly be to both support the artists that we care so much about and our audiences?
I agree, Fiona, and I think like before we coming back to the this, you got your new space and so does Kyotography, and Gwen, you have yours. If as festivals we stop being like one moment in the year and we can have more of a presence all year and connect to a more diverse community. And the festival, Kyotography does, as Ballarat's doing, and I'm sure Gwen, you're doing this outreach to schools. If we can engage our communities all year round, and then I think that allows us to give more opportunity to artists as well. And then maybe it won't matter so much if in these like consolidated moments we can't have our big audience, because we can, you know, we can have a broader spectrum and maybe have a deeper value and conversation with our audience.
And I definitely agreed about like this connectivity and also placing the decisions in the hand of our audience. And this is a process I think is empowerment, because this empowerment will also allow them to take a greater ownership of what they are enjoying and what they're seeing and what they're experiencing at the festival. And I think Fiona has raised this example of Brighton Photo Festival, which I was also involved in an earlier conversation with the festival on the fact that what could be possibly alternative models to a photo festival that actually involve enormous amount of resources, not just sponsorship dollars, but also a lot of manpower, which is an hours that goes into making a show good. And this is also a very important conversation, because the idea of arts productions may be changing as we are talking right now, right? Yeah, because a lot of time we are still looking at technology as a tools that allow connectivity. Another questions that will come in is that would media and technology become the language in our arts, and not just a tools as a medium to create, you know? So again, there's this conversations as in, is it just simply presenting photographic images in moving slides, or is it we are embracing this new technology in creating, in reimagining images and creations? So, and I think this is still evolving, even as this point we are talking about. Can we still look at, say, embracing a beautiful space and place envisioned in a three-dimensional way in a physical sense, and how would this three-dimensional physical sense will mean in the digital space. Again, it requires a very different sets of thinking and creation right from the very beginning, not just to repurpose something to put it online. Yeah. So, so this is also something that is going through the mind of many artists and image maker right now too, as we are still talking.
I think what we're going to see, and not for a while, maybe in the next 18 months, is what you're saying. Like, it's not only the creators that are reimagining space, but our audiences are really going to change as well, particularly areas that have been really hardly affected by the pandemic. And also, we haven't seen the full economic fallout yet. So
yes.
before the pandemic, people were very interested in like experience. They just wanted like a blockbuster. They want to go and they want to go out for dinner and they want to be seen. And, you know, this is, it's a generalization, but that this is how it was kind of operating. And now what we've seen this year, I think, is people are more coming back to this idea of maybe they don't really need to see the huge blockbuster exhibition again and again. Maybe they're more interested in like local stories and more human stories about something that's happening now that they can relate to. And then this kind of emotional response, maybe that's creating a new type of space. So it's not a physical space, but a new mental space that we're maybe as cultural institutions and arts workers, we can imagine something with that, to piggyback on that and harness this. Like, I think it's a very positive path.
Yes, I absolutely agree with you about like the blockbuster or big names. And even for SIPF this year, our biggest show is comprised of a group exhibition of 15 Singapore photographers with a titles called Margins, drawing pictures of home. And this is actually drawing in so many audiences. In the opening week, we are seeing thousands of people arriving for that one group show that has far exceeded all the other previous blockbusters we have with Daido Moriyama and so on and so forth. And I believe that this is a time whereby people want to connect back within themselves, asking what really matters, and the pace of life has changed. And also the values sort of like shifted too. So, and Fiona, do you sense this change too in Melbourne or in Ballarat with content and audience and a way of living or lifestyles?
Well, as I said earlier, we've all been locked down. So, you know, 6 million people have been locked down for 120 days. So the way we're coming out of these stages is perhaps very different to what we expected. I think we're actually looking back at that isolation and the quiet and the thinking time, and we're looking back at it as a time that we really enjoyed the pausing. Of course, there was, you know, devastation worldwide, but on a very personal level, a lot of people are actually sort of talking about the lack of speed, the ability to really think. It's like both of you were talking about these ideas of alternative ways of artists engaging. And if we look at, you know, photography at its essence, you know, how the camera has evolved and how, you know, a lot of contemporary artists are even removing themselves, and have done for over 100 years, removing themselves from the camera and looking at those objects as tools. And I think if we look forward to going into the future, where currently I think technology, we're still using technology as a tool, and it's something that we make a decision and then we use the tools to create it. And sometimes the tool takes on its own world in a way, but I think that the thinking about how the digital space can evolve from, let's face it, I mean, we do not want to walk around a virtual gallery anymore. I mean, We've seen that all year. We don't want to, you know, there's lots of stuff that's happening that's very much tool-based in terms of activities that we can use on the screen. And I think this thinking time is allowing the really, the big thinkers to actually think far beyond that technology. And I think the idea of bringing back to local, I believe very strongly that the bringing back to local has been happening for quite some time, even prior to COVID. I think the idea of globalism in itself, a very strong topic with photographers, that feeling has shifted for quite some time. And then I think COVID really accelerated a lot of our thoughts about, you know, how much we needed to engage with everyone and everything around the world. But
Yeah,
coming back to the,
I think that's totally right. And one opportunity that like we have as a community, like the three of us and the extended people like us in our positions, we used to be able to meet up in person, so we could visit each other's events and we could exchange and spend time together. And that one thing that's been a really difficult moment. But a great thing that maybe can come from that is maybe we have more connectivity because of the digital, and people are more willing to share together like this rather than have to meet up, you know, at each other's event. We can actually create something together that lasts all year. That's not just for arts workers, that's for everybody.
Yeah, I think, Laura, what you say is almost like art as in being so much part of life and with the person every day throughout the year, and not just that one specific moment like in the exhibition, but something that it can carry on. It sounds like it's like food nourishment to the soul, isn't it? Like this nourishment that we need for our life, and that comes from the arts and culture around us. And it's also, I also want to bring back earlier on when both Fiona and Lauren was talking about this new permanent space that is happening in Ballarat and in Kyoto, because I guess that no one expected the pandemic to arise in this 2020 and disrupt it, but all of a sudden the idea of space, physical space, has shifted. One of the interesting discussion I could read in Singapore, this online discussion involved someone was saying that given the fact that online learning and teaching is all at home now, perhaps the school campus doesn't need that much of ground and space for the campus anymore. And all of a sudden, there's also discussions like perhaps institutions have to relook at whether space is required. And even so, for businesses like bankers are actually working from home now, they may not need a very big, sparkling, high-rise building right in the middle of the business district anymore, given that everyone actually work from home and seems pretty effective. So, but back to the arts, of course, we know the importance of a space because it's like the roof over it's like having a roof for the photography, for the arts that we are presenting. So I would like to hear from both of you, you know, what arise for y'all to decide to embark on this journey to have a permanent space, and what do you envision this permanent space mean for you and for your committee, and of course for your stakeholders and audiences? Yeah. So Fiona, do you want to start first, or?
Well, thank you, Lauren. So yes, I think that the idea of what a physical space is needed has changed a lot. And there's a man called Bernard Salt who's been spending a lot of time during COVID discussing how urban cities are going to change and how far we will travel, you know, from our home. and he's talking about the idea of, rather than large institutions worldwide, he envisages in the next 10 to 15 years that the smaller suburbs will have, you know, the art gallery, the hospital, the dentist, the little hotels. Everything will be much smaller to accommodate these kind of communities that might not travel as much as we have. So with the building being purchased in 2018, way before we even thought the word pandemic. I know Singapore, I'd like to know more from you, Gwen, also, because Singapore, you've had pandemics and you've got a pandemic hospital and, you know, you've got pandemic policies. We do now too, of course, but we didn't then. But the idea that we've established this gallery to represent photographic artists, I think it's still valid. I think in the context of us being a small regional town in Australia, I think the context will definitely change. We already engage with our local community and our local artists. We already engage with our local Indigenous community. And I think when you've seen some of the exhibitions, we've worked with Indigenous curators as well. I think Tracy Moffat, of course. So I think, well, let's be perfectly honest. I'm just going to tell it. I'm going to put it out there on the video. I hope it will be okay. I think it will be okay. Yes, we'll reconsider our spaces, but in a way, the fact that we can only have 1 or 2 people per square metre during what's called COVID normal will be fine for a smaller gallery, because we'll be able to manage people's expectations when they're going through that space. But we've also introduced a complete one entire floor, which is going to be the top floor of this building, which is a completely digital space. So we're working with engineers and artists who work within the 3-dimensional space to imagine what this space will be. So this will be very much not dissimilar, I suppose, in Japan to Team Lab, different in its output, but similar in its structure. So I think that those sorts of experiences, I think, will be quite interesting for our audiences.
I think it's interesting when you mentioned about like smaller cities and cities being self-contained, and but that also means that how arts and culture could actually populate many more smaller cities too, rather than just culture in the main cities, like say in London. It could be also culture in many other smaller cities around. And for Ballarat, I understand because I visited your festival last year and visited this amazing building, which is formerly a bank, right? And what do you foresee this space that would mean for your audience, and what kind of impact you envision that it means for the people, or even for the photographers?
Yeah, so it's going to be difficult for people to understand how simple this town is. It has one art gallery, it has one theatre, but it has nearly 100,000 people. So the arts component of this city has never been nurtured and allowed to grow. So being only 100 kilometres from Melbourne, most people commute to their workplace, and then they come home for their beautiful fresh air, large, beautiful gardens, very big houses because we're in Australia. And they have this beautiful lifestyle that hasn't, I think, in a sense, they haven't really considered that they've needed the arts, because within 45 minutes or an hour, they can go to the major art galleries and the major theatres and the performance dance companies in Melbourne. So I think that this building now is going to, I don't believe it'll be the final. I think this is going to be the catalyst. That's what I'm planning. So for the 4 years that I've been living in Ballarat, I've seen myself as a catalyst. I'm not originally from this town. I've come to that town. I've seen all the wonderful things in the town, and then I've said, oh, we could do so much more. So I see what we're doing with the National Centre for Photography as, I'm hoping for it to be a catalyst for people to see that we can actually grow the art sector yes, of course, photography is at the core of our city, but certainly lots of other art forms as well. So just to summarise, rather than people expecting to be able to travel, they can now start having these experiences closer to home.
Wonderful. And also, I think that is, I really look forward to the opening of the center soon. And to Lauren, I believe that educational program is one of the key activities in Kyotography. And earlier on, before the start of this conversation, you shared these plans and ideas on this permanent space in Kyoto. Perhaps you would like to share a bit more about like the space here happening at Kyoto.
We decided to develop a permanent space because it was the right time for the festival. We've grown so much over the years that we there was like a little bit exploding. We needed another avenue to explore. So what Delta's provided us with is it's called Delta, it's Kyotographie's permanent space. It's in one of the most historic shopping districts in Kyoto. It's this year we were very lucky. Before the pandemic, we had 2 artists in residence come, and that was partly because of we have Delta. So we had Omar Victor Diop, this is Omar. And he's a Senegalese artist who did his residency and made portraits of all the people in the shopping district, well, not like the main faces in the shopping district. And in Japan, it's called a shotengai. And these people are very important in the community, and he styled them in his style. And the very interesting comment that he made was actually the Kyoto kind of shopping scene is very much like Africa. So he could find some real commonalities. Mm-hmm. So this was beautiful. The community loved this work, and it really helped bring the space into the community. And then we had Marianne Tiwan, who made her installation Destroyed Kyoto House. So she does these all over the world, but actually made us one in Kyoto, which is still exhibiting now until February 2nd. So this was incredible, and it will be such a shame when it has to get smashed, but she's very brilliant. But this kind of space let us do this, and now we're going to have a rotating every 2 weeks. We have a different exhibition with a different emerging photographer or somebody more established. Then we developed the education program with the Kyotographie Academy, which will partner with different institutions and different art schools globally and offer eventually some accreditation working with us, but also offering events for everyone from the general public to children to professional photographers, or maybe business people that don't understand the importance of the image, this kind of thing. So yeah, it was a scary moment to open that, but a great moment too, because now we have a space in the community. And I think for you, Fiona, you're going to see, like, I think Ballarat is going to become such a massive hub with that building, especially if you've got all the top story that's all digital, and this will be fantastic.
Yeah, and it's like amazing plans despite all that is chaos and uncertainty going on. And I believe that there's actually so much strength and grit in every platform looking forward and not to be held back by what is going on and what we are experiencing. We do have questions coming in as we were sharing and chatting here. Based on your experience this year, do you find that bringing Photo Festival online has made it more accessible and less exclusive? Example, looking at international film festivals opening up, etc. So this is a question from the public. Yeah. So any Fiona or perhaps Laura would like to share about these questions, answer in response to the questions.
I suppose just briefly, I would say that I don't believe that photographic festivals have ever been exclusive. I've always felt that photography is probably one of the most inclusive festivals, and I've travelled around the world to festivals, and I found them very inclusive. But I do think that the online has definitely made it more accessible. Yes.
I think so. It's made it more accessible in a way. In another way, maybe some people, yes, like the question is like there's a lot of film festivals and stuff opening up too. Unless you have an interest, maybe it's not as easy to access the content. Because when we have physical festivals, you know, you're kind of walking past and you're like, wow, what's that? Whereas if it's online, you really have to go and search for the content. So in a way, it's something.
Yeah, and
I'm missing this like moment with people.
yes, and I guess that when it comes to a physical space, especially in a public arena, the channel is so open, right? Whereas if it's a particular festival program or talks, it's really specific to someone searching for that talk or searching for that conversations. And that would mean the audience has to be very much focused and targeted in order for them to arrive at experiencing it online. But I think it's also interesting I think sometimes when I think about the idea of accessibility is also very subjective because accessibility to festival content is also subjected to how technology savvy the individual is. Because we do, while we are in a country that is very known for being technological advanced with 5G and connectivity, but there will always be strata, a certain segment of the community that may not have access to all this online or technology capability. So this idea of accessibility is also subjective too. Yeah.
When it's funny you say that, it just reminds me of one of our COVID measures. Like we have a lot of elderly people in Japan, and they're not very technically savvy, and trying to navigate how you get people to do like QR codes and do all these things when they don't have a smartphone, when they still have an old flip phone, when, you know, Japan, people still send faxes. So, and you know, you've still got the Hanko system. And so for some people, it's a very easy leap to do all these things digitally and they get it. For other people, it's like another planet. And to not isolate audience and make them feel, because in a way it makes it kind of exclusive when you rock up and you don't know how to get in. Like it's like, oh, maybe we won't go. So you have to try and make them feel comfortable, but use technology. And so there was a big thank you to our staff actually to navigate that. That was challenging.
Yeah, I think it applied the same to Singapore too. We do have like elderly or even some of the lower income families that may not have, like, say, having a computer at home or a smartphone to access the content online. And the questions always comes back to us, what is accessibility? And when we say that photography, our arts is for everyone, how can we continue to bridge that experience to everyone? And also, and I guess that I could hear from earlier on about just one last questions before we really end this 1 hour long conversations. You know, out of so many things that's happening, what do you think are the positive outcome, or are there any positive things that come out of this whole pandemic experience for you and for Fiona? Almost says that count your blessings. Yeah, like
for me personally, it's apart from being separated from my family in Australia, this is difficult. There's some isolation things that are difficult, but in it's been a very positive experience for me personally and professionally. The new challenge is always really super. And I think for our event, it's been very positive because we really felt our community, and I think now we're really married now. Where it used to be us and then they would visit us and there was exchange, but now because of the situation and everybody felt something and we all shared a moment together, I think there's a real solidarity, which I know I'm very proud of. And then and for the team, it was nice for the younger staff to have more involvement, and also to have more, because we couldn't do so much. We were always doing so much. We're all racing around. This year, we could be more considered and be together as a team. And I think that really strengthens the team as well.
Wow. And I guess that the key word is solidarity, and how everyone comes together on the same boat, and how everyone are wanting to move forward together.
Yeah. Hang on.
Yes, indeed. And also, Fiona, how about you? I'm so looking forward to Ballarat International Photo Finale next year, and I'm already hearing so much great things coming up. Wow. Perhaps Fiona would like to share hints what could people expect in Ballarat in 2021.
So of course the program's not released yet, but we've got, I suppose we've done all sorts of really exciting projects, from creating Minecraft games for our photographers, where photographers are engaging with the game designers to work out how they can re-realize their exhibitions, add in, you know, favorite musicians, a little bit of filmic work, some narratives as well, plus it's a game. I mean, we've got all that sort of thing happening, but I suppose, you know, just to summarize the year for me, I'd have to say that it was, and I think it's the same for everyone, that notion of holding on, and really, because, you know, we were isolated at home, it was actually about trying to continue to stay positive when there were so many unanswered questions. As a director, I mean, we thrive on challenges. I mean, that's the only reason why we survive, because it's a very, very challenging job. So you have to love those challenges. You can't be someone who, you know, gets stressed, for example. It's just, those challenges are what drives us. And in fact, if there aren't enough challenges in a week, we actually create new ones to develop new ideas, to explore the new notions of photography, whether it's in education or in curation or online education or Zooming or whatever it is. So I suppose this year, I think for me, those challenges that I love became almost insurmountable, and being really personal, I suppose, to this audience who, can I say to you all, I cannot see you, so I don't know even know if you're there. But the thing that's really challenging was that those difficult issues or challenges or ideas, they were so unanswerable that for most directors around the world, we really spent lots of time on Zoom trying to work out how we could even begin to think along another path. So for me, it wasn't until probably June or July that all of a sudden I felt the whole world started to grow back again, and I started to see these incredible opportunities, like you were saying, Lauren, community and teamship and all those things. But, you know, as a director, I don't think many people realise that it has been an incredible challenge. And separate to this photographic world that we're talking about, if you think about a performing arts festival, for example, in Singapore and Japan, I mean, that's even a greater kind of situation. I didn't want to leave it on that, you know, sad note, because it actually has been super exciting in terms of the progress. The festival will go on in its real state. We will have every single person who's allowed to fly into Australia. We're hoping you will all come. I mean, We think Singapore will definitely be one of the early openers for us. We know New Zealand is as well. It will be primarily local, hopefully. The festival will be, I think, will be fantastic. I mean, when you were involved in the Feynman New Photography Award, that's the new Asia Pacific photographic award for quite a significant amount of money. That's hopefully will, I suppose, allow our region. So I suppose I'm really interested. We're talking now in our region, and I'm hoping that we can engage more in our region as well.
Thank you, Fiona. And I think that my biggest encouragement is to have this conversation with all of you here, because with this conversation and all of us here together, not just, and also our audience who are listening to us, it shows that we are actually passionately pursuing what we believe in and not giving up. And I think this passion for what we believe in truly spur me on. And this is also this passions that will really just spread like fire to the community around us.
Yeah, bravo.
And thank you so much, Lauren and Fiona, for this very interesting conversation, but also very down to earth, very candid sharings about what you are experiencing through in Australia and in Kyoto. And I believe that there are so much to learn from one another through this conversation, not just only for the audience, even for myself. And I hope that people would who are listening here to know that there's always a better tomorrow to look forward to. And thank you. And here and of course, before I say goodbye to everyone, we do have an online survey which will flash out after this whole online conversations. We really want to hear from our audience and even from the speakers what you think about these conversations, and your feedback, your suggestion will be so helpful for us for our next program and talk. Thank you, Fiona. Thank you, Lauren.
Thank you, Larry. It was lovely to talk to you. And good luck with your events. And I'll talk to you soon.
Yes.
Bye.
Thank you. Bye.